Greetings, and welcome to Conversations with Exploring Hard Decisions While Living with ALS, presented by ALS United Greater New York with our staff hosts Nancy Brenner and Debbie Schlossberg. This series of recorded interviews with a variety of special guests will explore and present topics which are sometimes sensitive, personal, or may not be addressed in regular support groups, but which we know often provoke thought and deep questioning.
Hi, Debbie. Good to see you.
Hi, Nancy.
So excited that we're starting our conversations with today.
Me too. We've been working on this for a long time, and our first guest today is really going to knock it out of the park. I'm so excited.
Me too. So I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Natalie Bauman. She is very accomplished. Natalie is an award-winning video producer, writer, and director. She's used her professional skills to help individuals, families, and organizations to explore their history, values, and legacy through storytelling. Natalie founded the Digital Mosaic in 2014 and has worked with many organizations and families to capture and preserve stories, ensuring that invaluable life lessons get shared with the next generation. Natalie loves working with people to record stories through online tools or in person. Today, she's going to share her insights on why it is so important for everyone to document their lives. And now we warmly welcome Natalie Bauman.
Hi, guys. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're really excited to have you with us. And so to start, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got involved with helping people to tell their life stories?
Sure. It's kind of a long story, so we'll keep it to the short version, which is what we always try to do with video stories. I'd been a professional video producer for my entire career. And when I returned back to Cleveland about 20 years ago, I got pulled into doing storytelling through a documentary I did with one of the local nursing homes with Holocaust survivors, and had the opportunity to both teach some high school students how to do the interviewing process, as well as interview them myself. And just, it was such an emotional experience of having them share these very heartfelt, very painful stories, but recognize that the value of the stories was more important than the emotional angst of going through the retelling. And it just really resonated with me. And I started doing more and more individual storytelling with groups and families from there. And just time and time again, saw the value of both the experience of telling your story. People rarely think their stories have value. And I will say that universally, I can't really think of more than 2 or 3 people that I've interviewed over all these years who have not said, oh, well, I don't know who's going to watch these. It's not really that important. But again, I've seen time and time again when we've lost some of the people who we've interviewed, their family members treasure those videos almost more than anything, and anything else that they leave them in their will or their legacy. It becomes their life legacy. It becomes the story that future generations who never know them will be able to tell their kids about, and see their expressions and see how they connect with the people who they're on camera with. And just the deep meaning that the families found through both the experience and then having the videos later just created such an impression on me. I just found more and more ways to help people tell their stories. So that's kind of how it evolved from being a professional video producer to doing one-on-one storytelling. And that's just a piece of the puzzle, but it's been a really important part of my career and my personal experience as well.
Wow. So Natalie, sharing one's life story can surely be a great gift of love. Can you share with our audience a little bit about how they can get started telling their life stories?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of different approaches to take. And obviously, you know your family member better than anybody what course they will be most comfortable with. But it can start from something as simple as a conversation, and you have a pen and paper and you just take a lot of notes. Even when I started getting into genealogy, I had notes that I'd had from different conversations with my parents and different family members that I was able to piece together a bigger story, which was really helpful. And if nothing else, you at least have that written, and it doesn't have to be like a formal written process. You don't have to be a writer to learn about someone's life story. You just kind of take notes as you go. And if they're comfortable being recorded, the audio app on most people's phones or computers is a really simple way to just record. You don't have to think about what you're going to do with it later. You're just capturing the moment. Grandchildren often can be a wonderful way in with a grandparent because, as I mentioned before, people don't often think their story matters enough to think, oh, I'm going to record my own story. It seems egotistical, right? And I think that's a very common mindset. But when your child or your grandchild says, oh, please tell me about where you grew up, or tell me what life was like when you were little, or tell me about what, your experience during 9/11 or other, big world events that affected all of us, those are things that people feel comfortable sharing and documenting. So an audio recording with a grandchild is a wonderful way to spend a visit. And then for the more adventurous, of course, and it depends on comfort level, you can record as well with just a device that you have in your house. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need lights and microphones. Just an iPhone or Android phone, or just any kind of simple video recorder can be a wonderful way to record. And you can record not just the person being interviewed, but a third party person could interview a grandchild talking to an adult about their life. And then you get the dynamic between the two of them too, which is very exciting. So there's really no limitation and you shouldn't be limited by the tools or your comfort with technology. Start with a pen and paper, see where you go from there.
The work that you do sounds so like heartwarming and inspiring and meaningful. You created the digital mosaic back in 2014. Can you tell us more about that, and what it is and how it works?
So I've always been inspired by StoryCorps, which is a nonprofit national organization that was affiliated with NPR at the time. And they just did audio story recordings. And they've grown quite a bit since then. But it always bothered me as a video professional that if people were sitting down to record an audio story, why not record video as well? And at the time, technology on devices were a lot more challenging, especially in terms of where do you store the videos, because the files were so huge. So I kind of set off on a little mission to say, what technology could we adapt or create to make it simple for people to use their own devices to record stories, and then not only record them, but also to be able to share them in private groups for families or in public groups for nursing homes, for museums and libraries. And so I hired a team of app developers and a website developer, and we created the digitalmosaic.com, where all the videos would live. But then the app was called Simply Told. And the app first launched, I think, in 2015, and retired in 2020 with COVID. And the app included 300 basic life story questions divided into categories. So you would have love, the old country, family traditions, and all the big categories to help people think about where to start. Because that was another big question that people often had. I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't know where to start. So the questions would appear on your phone as a prompt. You would press the story, it would record, you would interview the person. It could be as long as you wanted. And then the story would upload to a secure website where it could be shared. So we did that for families, but then through a connection I had, a woman who ran a senior center, I found out about a creative aging program from the state of Ohio, from the Ohio Arts Council. And she said, why don't we try using your app as part of this creative aging grant? And we did this wonderful storytelling program. We ended up getting a nice sized grant to start it. And it lasted about, it was the course of a year, but we did a video recording with, I think it was 30 different seniors, where they would come and set up sessions, and I would interview them about their life, and they would then get trained how to use the app themselves, so they could go home and interview their family or capture video of heirlooms and talk about the history of the heirlooms. And it was a learning process for all of us about how people learn, how they value their stories, and then how they share them with their families. So the app itself was a great tool, and it had its time. And now the business has really evolved to doing one-on-one storytelling through Zoom like this, or in a personal one-on-one setting in person, which is always really a treat. So digital mosaic was a wonderful tool to kind of launch digital mosaic video storytelling out into the world with the StoryCorps model, but then it kind of took on a life of its own.
Thank you.
So you mentioned StoryCorps, and I know there are a bunch of other ideas out there. What are some other ways that people can document their family histories?
Oh, sure. There's some great apps and tools out there at all different price points. There's some of the ones that I've seen recently. There's an app where you can upload a photo and tell a story about that specific photo, and then it gets saved in a similar manner to how we were doing it with ours. There's I think it's called Storyworth, and there's some other iterations of that. Where you get emailed a question every month or every week. I'm not sure the frequency, and then you answer it and you send it back. And then at the end of the year, they send you a book that's made up of your stories. I mean, it's really interesting because sometimes when people want to tell their story as a biography, like a third person version, there's new models being made all the time of how you can do that. There's even an organization I saw that's making children's books for your grandchildren out of your life stories. So there's all sorts of different ideas out there and different tools that are searchable and easy to find online that, probably would satisfy most people's desires of how they want their story told if they need support. And probably your local library is a great place to start too, because they'll know what tools are available for free. Just always the best place to start.
Yeah, it all sounds so amazing. And you talked about grandchildren getting involved, and I think that that's so special. And with our population, children and grandchildren, both might be able to get involved. And what suggestions do you have for kids starting to get involved, or for people to help their children or grandchildren begin this process of working with their loved ones?
Well, I think sometimes the easiest thing to do is start with something as simple as a photo album. And it could be taking pictures from a photo album and asking the person, what does this make you feel? Or what do you know about this? I've done work with, we did a workshop with people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers. And the advice that I give there, I'll share now as well, is that you don't want to necessarily have like a specific date or specific detail that you're trying to get out of somebody when you're recording, because that creates a physiological reaction where people get very anxious. They're like, oh, I don't remember exactly the date. And then they lose some of the naturalness of their response, and they get nervous, and it's hard for them to move forward. So instead of saying, tell me about when you got married, you might want to say, what does love mean to you? The same thing with a picture prompt. Instead of saying, oh, do you remember this, Grandma? How old was I there? Or, a specific detail that might cause somebody some angst. You might just say, what does this picture remind you of? Or how do you feel when you look at this picture? That gives an open-ended answer that can never be wrong. So whatever they say is right. There's never any correcting of the answers. If you're working with somebody who is very capable of getting into all those details, I also do find that if there's specific information you're looking for, maybe talk about it before you record. Have a list of information and let them refresh their memory of when the specific dates were, who's in which picture, that they can look at before you record. So then they feel prepared. They're not ambushed. Sometimes the spontaneous questions are great, but whenever people are having any kind of other physical challenges that might get in the way of them being able to answer those completely, give them the tools they need so they feel comfortable. That's the most important thing. And it's really more of a conversation than a test. So you can document the connection between the two people when the emotional levels are receptive and open.
A phenomenal way to do what we call life review. Natalie, we can't thank you enough. And this is just a taste. To our audience, we want to say that if you're interested in more of this, Natalie has been kind enough to provide her contact info. She's available to anybody that wants to reach out and learn more. And we're going to be having a part 2 with Natalie, where she's going to focus in a little bit more on some of the do-it-yourself techniques that she's alluded to, because now that your appetites are whetted, we're ready to dig in a little deeper. So Natalie, thanks a million. We really look forward to part 2. And in the meantime, folks, please be sure to check our website for upcoming episodes of Conversations With. Your comments and feedback mean the world to us. This is a new project and we can't wait to really run with it. So check our website, be in touch with Natalie, and we'll see you for part 2 with Natalie Bauman. Bye.
Thanks, Nat.
Bye, guys. Thank you.